opportunity for outreach. I want to begin with a quote. It's from His Eminence's last keynote address in Atlanta, and I'm going to read it. Any serious application of the theme, and the theme for that particular clergy laity congress was, gather my people to my home, come and see, must begin with a changing of mentality and attitude. We must change from an exclusive and all-absorbing focusing on our parish to an awareness of the existence of people outside of our parishes. People have the right to know what we know as the truth of God, to taste the joy of participating in our ecclesial community, to experience the blessings we experience, to be with God as we are by being Orthodox Christians. And that really is also all about what I'm about to share with you. 15 years ago, I was asked to look at intermarried couples across the Archdiocese and research them. And almost simultaneously with researching them, there was a great deal of pressure, applied to me to not only research them, but also reach out to them. But I resisted the temptation. The reason why is because 15 years ago, we didn't have the knowledge of the unique challenges that this population encounters in their efforts to worship in one of our churches. We didn't understand their unique needs. What I mean by needs is what they require to worship in one of our churches. Today, we're in a much better position to reach out, and reach out effectively. But our resolve, and this is my opinion, it's my humble opinion, our resolve is, it seems, disappeared. Now, I travel around the Archdiocese and I do workshops regularly. 10 years ago, when I did workshops, it was standing room only. These days, there are lots of chairs that are available. Which leads me to my next point. Sometimes it even seems to me as though we've given up on this challenge and moved on. But the challenge, and you know this, the challenge remains. It hasn't gone away, it's gotten more complex. And I've come to believe that we need to do more. I want to point to a few statistics which I lifted from the Department of Registry. These are marriages that took place between 1996 and 2008. I'm going to refer to the year 1996 and 2008. What happens in between looks something like this, a slope downward. Let's go back to this slide though. In 1996, 3,855 marriages took place across our Archdiocese. 13 years later, 2,822 marriages would take place across our Archdiocese. Again, look at the slope. It's downward. Let's go back to this slide one more time. Where is the loss? 3,855 to 2,822. That's over 1,000 marriages. Now, that might be considered chump change among some faith groups, but it's not among our faith group. That's a significant loss of numbers. Where can we account for the loss? The lion's share of losses are among those who are intermarrying or choosing to get married in our churches as intermarried couples. In 1996, 2,588 couples were categorized as inter-Christian couples. by the year 2008, that number drops almost 1,000 to 1657. That's where the significant loss is located. Now, I can't tell you why, but what I can suggest to you is the following. There appears to be more and more couples in our archdiocese who are intermarrying and also not getting married in our churches. Again, look at the slope. Let's move on. Now, between 1989 and 2009, that's 20 years, nearly 2 of every 3 marriages that took place in our archdiocese were categorized as inter-Christian marriages. That's a significant number in itself. That's 62% really. But that's not the whole story. That doesn't account for those who are not getting married, who didn't get married in our churches. So that percentage of 62% is likely significantly higher. I believe it's really higher. But we don't have to quibble about numbers. It's kind of like the divorce rate. When I go around the country and I talk about divorce, we can talk about divorce as 30%, 40%, 50%. It doesn't matter. It's high. That's the bottom line. And that's the point I want to make. Whether it's 62% or 75%, it's high. That's significantly high. Based on these figures, I believe these trends pose one of the greatest challenges to our archdiocese's well-being in the future. This challenge interrelates with every other challenge the archdiocese, I believe, is facing and will face in the future. And that's at all levels. I also believe this challenge fits perfectly with our Archbishop's commission to gather my people to my home, come and see. Because if people are going to get excited about outreach, who are they going to get excited about reaching out to, if not their children and their grandchildren? So my prayer is that this issue, this problem, this challenge, this opportunity is reinvigorated, and our interest in this pastoral challenge is reinvigorated. I would argue and maintain, to the extent that we embrace this challenge, the extent that we embrace the needed adjustments. By the way, I don't know what those adjustments are. Not all of them, at least. But the extent that we accept the changes, our metropolises, our churches, our families, our marriages will benefit. To the extent that we ignore them, well, I don't have to tell you what the consequences of that is. So in 2009, 1,606 inter-Christian weddings took place. Is that a problem or an opportunity? Of course it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity that interrelates to what Christ taught when he taught the parable of the lost sheep. The only problem is that we're not talking about one sheep here. We're talking about tens of thousands of sheep. Let me read the parable. What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the wilderness and go after the one which is lost until he finds it? And when he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. When he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, "Rejoice with me, for I found my sheep, which was lost." Again, as I mentioned to you, we're not talking about one sheep. We're talking about tens of thousands of sheep. We're also talking about a particular spirit that needs to pervade this effort to reach out to these disaffected, disenfranchised, however you want to call them, people who have drifted away from the church. The Spirit is one embodied in this parable here. And the response has to be one of joy and a desire to do more than we're doing. So this is an opportunity. It's also an opportunity that interrelates to St. Paul's mission-minded example. Listen to what he wrote in the first century. To the Jews, I became as a Jew in order to win Jews. To those under the law, I became as one under the law. To those outside the law, I became as one outside the law, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak, I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might by all means save some. What St. Paul was talking about here is embracing certain changes, certain adjustments that need to take place. And he did that in order to save souls by all means. It's also an opportunity that interrelates to St. Cyril and Methodius' mission-minded ministry to the Slavs. And finally, an opportunity that interrelates to Archbishop Anastasios' work in Albania today. By offering you these last 4 slides, what I'm suggesting is that outreach is indeed orthodox. We don't have to think about it as something that Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and other faith groups do. We have done it, we can do it. These servants of Christ have emulated our Lord's example. We're called to do the same with regard to this pastoral charge. Today, as I stated, we are in a much better position to profit from an archdiocesan-wide outreach effort. Today we have the knowledge. I don't know how many of you have been to this website, but this website attests to the knowledge that we have. There are volumes and volumes of pertinent information that can be useful to our efforts to reach out to this disaffected population. Just an example of some of the information. I do not have the time. I've been told to run through this very quickly. Today we have the research and understanding. Today we possess a thick, rich, systematic understanding of intermarried couples and their families. An understanding that I would submit to you is key to any effective outreach effort. This slide relates to challenges that intermarried couples face across the life cycle. This slide, just as an example, relates to the diversity that exists within this population, and there's lots of diversity. Even though we refer to these couples as intermarried, they all have different needs. We can refer to them as an aggregate, but they're all unique in and of themselves, with unique challenges. Today we have the needed resources. For example, we have this resource which has been around since 2002. It's a couple resource, When You Intermarry. This resource was written for intermarried couples. It catalogs challenges across the life cycle. It catalogs individual, couple, family, and extended family challenges. This resource provides premarital assistance to dating and engaged couples. And this resource provides Christ-centered coping strategies that can work. And this resource addresses the complex topic of conversion. And it is very complex for these couples. We have another resource referred to as Ministering to Intermarried Couples, a companion resource. And this resource also discusses many important subjects, like the following few. It was written for clergy and lay workers. It addresses the touchy issue of conversion. And it helps clergy and lay workers broach the subject in a respectful manner, a manner that can and does work. The resource also helps clergy and lay workers develop a mentoring program. Let me read that quote in the center of this slide here. If it wasn't for Nick, who took me under his wing when I first started coming to St. George, I probably wouldn't be here today. Nick and Nicole doesn't always exist in every parish. That's why we need a mentoring program. This resource also addresses the needs of not only the Orthodox spouse, but the non-Greek Orthodox spouse. And the reason why is really encapsulated in the quote on the bottom of the page. I'm more likely, this respondent indicated, to attend church if I think my husband feels comfortable and welcome. This resource also talks about the importance of following up after marriage. We marry couples, and then we don't see them again. Don't assume that they're going to come back. Many drift away. The resource also talks about programs, youth programs that must be sensitive to intermarried couples and their families. Here's a question for you. Could this happen in your church? There's a quote from an email respondent. My 13-year-old daughter came home yesterday from Sunday school. She informed me that she won't attend again. The reason is because her teacher told the class that intermarriage is a sin. This resource also talks about the importance of adult education. And oh, how important it is. First of all, our young people who have been raised in the church generally lack even a rudimentary understanding of the faith. So in many instances, they're at a great handicap of trying to help their partner understand the faith. This resource also talks about the importance of using English. Using more English during and after the Divine Liturgy enhances intermarried couples' participation. The resource also talks about celebrating ethnicity without sounding ethnocentric. Our young people have been schooled in a theory which is referred to as multiculturalism. And they know the difference between ethnocentric talk and celebrating ethnicity. Ethnocentrism is like radioactive to them. And when they hear it, they drift away from organizations which are ethnocentric. Anyways, I was saying today, we also have a premarital education program that is sensitive to the needs of intermarried couples and their families. It's referred to as the Journey of Marriage, and it's being rolled out even as I speak. And by the way, that was a Leadership 100 initiative. Today we have resources for intermarried couples which are equally sensitive to intermarried couples. And soon, we're hoping to have an out-of-the-box outreach program to this population of couples. Hopefully the date of completion will be this year. But today, as I indicated earlier, unlike 15 years ago, and this is my belief, I believe what is lacking is a firm resolve and a fervent interest in this topic. This should be a major concern to all of us. Today, tomorrow, in the future, we need to prayerfully ask some hard questions. Again, my belief. Questions like, what's been done? Questions like, what still needs to be done? Questions like, what's working? What isn't working? We need to adopt, I believe again, a beginner's mind with regard to this challenge. To sometimes take a one-down attitude. To take a humble, not knowing and curious approach. with regard to reaching this group of couples and families.